guys, I'm Ian, and today I want to talk about how some of the records in my collection by Joseph Spence and Skip James, how they're connected through one person, Henry Stuckey. So, who is Henry Stuckey? Henry Stuckey is known as the father of Bentonia blues. Bentonia blues is my favorite style of the blues. Skip James is its most notable performer of that style. And it's notable for its use of cross-note tuning, which Henry Stuckey actually learned while being in France. He was stationed there during World War I. He learned it from, I believe, Bahamas or Caribbean soldiers that were also stationed there. So Henry Stuckey was actually too young to join the war effort. He was born in the late 1890s, and he actually falsified his birth certificate so this way he could join. And he ends up being stationed in France, and in France he ends up meeting these Bahamas soldiers who teach him cross-note tuning, which creates Bentonia blues. So the story pretty much goes that Henry Stuckey was stationed in France, and he overhears these soldiers, Bahamas soldiers, that had brought their guitars with them, and they're playing, and if you ever listen to Skip James for the first time, it's the same experience. You're like, what on earth is he playing in? It's just so different.
The whole record was good, but that one song, Devil Got My Woman, I mostly just keep playing that over and over. Do you have any other records like that?
There are no other records like that.
So he hears them playing and he has to go over to them because he's a guitarist, he's from the Delta, he knows he's a blues guitarist. So he goes to the Bahamas soldiers, he asks them what they're playing in, and they showed him. And this just changes everything. So Henry Stuckey finds out from the Bahamas men that they're playing in cross-note tuning. And cross-note tuning is an open D minor tuning, so when you hit your guitar openly, it'll play an open minor chord. Like that. So this is definitely probably not what he heard them playing, but when I think of Henry Stuckey hearing these Bahamas men for the first time, I kind of think of Sloop John B. So I'm just gonna, I'll give a whack at it. Alright, so Henry Stuckey takes this tuning, which he learns from the Bahamas men. He's discharged from the army and he goes back home to Bentonia, Mississippi. So in Bentonia, Mississippi, he actually takes up a group of students, which becomes known as the Bentonia School, who the most notable of Bentonia School is Skip James, who is just one of my favorite performers of all time. I think that there's something about his voice that is just no one compares. And Skip James ends up being one of the only members of the Bentonia School to go on to record. So he records for Paramount Records in 1931, and he ends up cutting my favorite blues number of all time, which is Devil Got My Woman. And I think Devil Got My Woman kind of utilizes every guitar technique that Henry Stuckey must have learned, and I'm gonna show you what it sounds like. Alright, so I'm not Skip James, so this is not gonna be exact, but this is my best attempt at Devil Got My Woman. So Skip James, like most other blues artists, he goes into obscurity for about 30 years. He's not rediscovered until 1964 during the folk revival. So at this point, there was some young, I guess you could call them young hipster kids, they were going down south trying to find these old blues artists that they had heard on these old 78 RPM records, where they had heard these old blues sides that they were like, where are these people? They have to be alive. So after a lot of research and time, they went down south and they actually tracked down Skip James. And this is in 1964, and he ends up cutting 2 albums after this for Vanguard, which ended up being Today and Devil Got My Woman. And the whole time he's doing this, a Bahamian artist named Joseph Spence is actually gaining a lot of popularity. So a couple years prior to Skip James's Rediscovery, you have Samuel B. Charters in 1958. He's a musicologist, he's a folklorist, he pretty much was just obsessed with finding just interesting old music. So he travels to Andros in the Bahamas looking for traditional music to record for Folkways Records. And while there, he stumbles upon Joseph Spence. Now, Joseph Spence didn't even live in Andros, I believe. I'm pretty sure he was living in Nassau, and he was only in Andros for work, I believe, and I believe he was just at a friend's house. So you have Samuel B. Charters just in the Bahamas, and he stumbles upon Joseph Spence, and he's playing guitar. So he has all of his equipment with him, and he takes all of his equipment out, and he records Joseph Spence on the spot, and it ends up being a full album. So that ends up being released in 1958 on Folkways Records. It ends up being Bahamian Folk Guitar by Joseph Spence. I'm not very good at playing Joseph Spence stuff, but I'll try and do. I can't even play like a single one of his songs fully. So I'll kind of just, I'll mess around in the Joseph Spence style just so you kind of hear the differences. I find it so interesting that Henry Stuckey somehow took these like stylings of Joseph Spence almost and applied them to a whole different set of music with the blues. And I find it even more interesting that Henry Stuckey wasn't even recorded. He never recorded a single song, and not much information is even known about him. His music kind of only lived on through people like Skip James and Jimmy Duck Holmes, who actually just released an album, I think 3 years ago, I may be wrong, don't shoot me. But yeah, it's just incredible that you have this one man that kind of is the bridge between the two, yet there's barely any information or any actual, you can't hear him anywhere. It's just incredible that only his students went on to record, and only really 2 of them did. Alright, that's all I've got for today. I'll be back next week with more records.
Shrevey, who cares about what's on the flip side of a record?
I do! Every one of my records means something. The label, the producer, the year it was made. Who was copying whose styles, who was expanding on that. Don't you understand? When I listen to my records, they take me back to certain points in my life, okay? Just don't touch my records. Ever.